I will introduce myself. My name is Tatiana Shalepko. I'm a Cambridge English ELT consultant. And today we're talking about communication and how to prepare teams for communication era. And the first thing to introduce would be the agenda for today. So today we will look at what communication is, how did it change throughout the history, how will it be different in future, and how to prepare students for this. And we will also have a look at Prepare Ukrainian Edition, what's new in that section. So when we think of communication, the first thing to do would be to define the term, right? And from the Latin, communication means to share and to be in relation with something, with someone. This is an important part, to be in relation with, because it's not only about the language, how to use the language, how to use the register, how to shift the register, but it's mostly about how we relate to each other. It's about the connection and sharing. It's not about just transmitting and receiving information. It's about sharing information and making it common, finding the common ground with each other. And there is a funny definition from Wikipedia. It's an apparent answer to the painful divisions between self and others, private and public, and inner thought and outer world. What would that mean? It means that throughout the whole history, humanity would be striving for communication. And recently I was translating one of the really great speakers who specializes in building spaces, building environments. And what he says is that the city is not the best place for communication, because city is something that took away the community from people. And he suggests moving to the villages, building communities there, being close to the nature, and so on. Since the internet appeared, we might think that communication would change, and we will look at it in how it works in the history. But before that, I will ask you to imagine a sofa. Just think of a sofa. When I say sofa, you at once have a concept in your head. And most probably you are imagining some specific sofa. It's not an abstract sofa. If I ask you what color, you would immediately imagine a color. What material? What age? What type? What surrounds the sofa? And all of you will have very, very different images inside your heads. It can be a modern sofa, it can be different color, it can be a ancient or Victorian sofa. There might be something around it. It might be in the office or in the house. It might be some very strange sofa that you imagine. If you're a designer, you would be imagining something different. But what does it give us? It gives us that even though there is a word to mark some notion, it doesn't mean that for all the people this word means the same. And we're talking about a very simple thing, sofa, right? This is something very specific, very objective. It's in the reality. And if we talk about some abstract things, this becomes much more difficult to connect and to share the meaning. So it's important to remember that language doesn't mean knowing the language very well. Being a linguist doesn't mean that you can communicate properly, because when you want to communicate an idea, you need to communicate the whole concept. And language, especially different languages, have very different concepts. It might be the same. It's usually the same. Mother would be the same concept for each language, right? And it sounds very similar in each language. But at the same time, for every person, this picture, the worldview, defines all the other little concepts that are connected to this particular word. And it depends on the experience of a person, and it depends on the age of a person, and on the nationality, and so on. So communication is a little bit harder thing to teach and to understand than the language. I also have a cartoon sofa for someone who likes cartoons. I would be imagining something like that for sure. So, if we look at communication and how it was developing, in ancient times, we, the people, the Homo sapiens, would communicate through pictures, through icons, and through symbols that we would leave in the caves and things like that. We might think that, this is not very sophisticated way of communication, it's too primitive. But at the same time, people were sharing a concept. And if they leave this picture, it means much more than that. They could communicate the whole concept through only one picture. We sometimes need the whole novel or a few books to communicate one topic with words that we have. So this is one way that people had when everything was simpler and we had much less notions in this world. But still, this was the beginning. Then we had a breakthrough in 15th, 16th century when people invented printing and press, of course, and when they could distribute knowledge and people could share concepts, share news, share scientific research. But before that, people would only communicate, even through generations, they would communicate orally, right? That's how we have all the folk songs and so on that would communicate something from family to from generation to generation through the family. And on one hand, that would keep people in closed social groups. On the other hand, they didn't have that much variety of information that could be fake and that can be rewritten, remade, and all the things that we have to deal with in terms of information these days. So with the invention of printing, communication changed drastically and turned to more written communication, at least from the information source. In 17th century, the newspapers actually became really popular, and people in the remote parts of the whole world were more interested in what's going on around the world, about famine, about wars, about anything that is happening in the world. Mostly, of course, they were talking about crisis, and this is what the news are. They are mostly the news about what happened somewhere in the world. And of course, people's communication changed from the keeping it in the family, from this bubble of communication in the family and community. For example, in a small village, they would receive more news from the outer world, and communication became a little bit more global. In 18th century, people invented how to distribute newspapers better, the routes, how to find the recipient of this information in a better way. And in 19th century, you know that in 1831, John Henry invented telegraph, and just in a few decades, in 1876, Graham Bell invented telephone, and the news could be spread much easier in the world, and the information became more accessible. In the 20th century, we have internet, and it's one of the biggest breakthroughs in technology and in terms of information, of course, because actually from the moment of inventing fire signal system, this is the greatest breakthrough, the internet, and it changes how we live and how we perceive communication a lot, and we have to deal with that for sure, because it's completely new. This technology has always been influencing the world and how we understand the world and how we live our lives. But with the internet, the whole idea of internet, it's something that nowadays is taking away the advantages from the cities as they are. Yeah, you can go shopping on the internet, you can go and listen to the music instead of going to the concert, you can be connected to anyone in this world because of the internet. You can sit somewhere far away in the wood, but if you have access to the internet, you can do anything that previously required your presence in the city. Yeah, you can get entertainment, learning, online work, remote work, and so on. So it's very different, and teenagers are now those people who never knew the world without internet as we do. So their communication is developing in a very different way. But, and yeah, of course, 21st century, we have lots of applications, social media, streaming platforms, and so on. And all this influences the way we communicate, the way teenagers communicate, and the way they will build their communication in future. So if we look at this timeline, we can't even imagine what's going to be next. But if we think of something that didn't change, it's the skill, because communication is the skill. Once we learn this skill, we have it in our mindset, and it doesn't go anywhere from us, because when we learn how to play the piano, it's the skill. If we practice, we know how to do it. If we don't practice, if somebody takes away the piano, we still remember how to do it. We know because we have this skill. Communication as a skill also has to be taught. And it's not about only grammar, lexical material, and so on. Communication as the skill is about learners who are able to choose the most appropriate language to use in different situations, manage conversations effectively, and express themselves clearly and confidently. So if we look at teenagers, how, what does their communication skill consists of? Not the skill, the competency itself, yes, because it's actually the competency, which is a set of few skills. So communication competency consists of three main skills: using appropriate language and register for the context, facilitating interactions, and participating with appropriate confidence and clarity. These three main skills are subdivided into more components. So the first one, using appropriate language and register for the contexts, consists of using language appropriate for the situation, using a variety of language and communication strategies, adapting language use according to different cultures and social groups. Facilitating interactions consists of using communication strategies to facilitate conversations and using strategies for overcoming language gaps and communication breakdowns. And the last one, participating with appropriate confidence and clarity, means structuring spoken and written text effectively and using appropriate language and presentation styles with confidence and fluency. So the main thing here is never about learning grammar or learning new words, but about using it appropriately. Yeah, and when we think of English as a subject where we can teach communication as a competency, we shouldn't think of English as just the subject where we teach language. It's the subject where we use language as an instrument for solving other problems, for understanding what the communication situation is. Who are we speaking to? If we're talking to a teacher, we would use different register. If we're talking to our partner, we can speak easier. Yeah, we can speak more fluently and not be afraid to make mistakes. So what we need to do as teachers is to create the environment where communication will be taught as a skill, where it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fall down, like riding a bicycle. Before we learn how to ride a bicycle professionally, we fall down many times. Even if we know how to ride and not to fall down, we still can make our skills more proficient. So communication is an essential professional and life skill, and it enables us to share information, ideas, as well as express feelings and arguments. Communication is also an active process influenced by the complexities of human behavior, in which elements such as nonverbal behavior and individual styles of interpreting and ascribing meaning to events have significant influence. And at this point, we need to understand that communication is not only about speaking correctly, appropriately, with the correct register, intonation, and so on. It's also about our non-verbal skills. What it means that when we teach communication, when we teach new topics in the English lessons, we pay attention. When we evaluate our students, we pay attention also to how they use their gestures, how they use their facial expressions, how they feel when they speak, what attitude they have to whatever they say. And this is something more about communication than just using the present perfect correctly. And as a skill, communication is about mastering effective communication, which is more than just mastering the core language resources of grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Yeah, it's in this metasphere when we can always tell when communication is effective and when it's not. And the main thing here is to be open in your communication, be able to listen and to respond properly. Okay. So if we look at these three components, for each component, for each skill, there is a component, and for each component there is a can-do statement, and for each component there is a way to develop this skill as a whole. So when we think about using appropriate language and register for the context, it refers to a learner's understanding that there are formal, semi-formal, informal situations which require them to vary their language and expressions and adapt their communication style. They can use different language for different situations. For example, if it's an invitation to a party, this would be one function of the language. If it's talking about your family, this is another function. If it's persuade someone having an argument, it's the third type of language. Yeah, so language is of course crucial, but what's more crucial is to use it appropriately. Facilitating interactions is related to a learner's ability to converse with others effectively and efficiently by knowing how to initiate, maintain, and end the conversation appropriately. All this hello, goodbye, and polite things that is must have even before we learn the grammar of some of the expressions, like, can I have a book, please? Can you give me a pencil, please? And this very basic communication phrases that we use in the classroom. This is something we really need to teach before we actually teach these chunks of the language as a part of our grammar topic. Participating with appropriate confidence and clarity refers to a learner's ability to communicate effectively with appropriate fluency, confidence, and pace. Right? To see whether people understand you or not, to read, to create eye contact, and to read another person's facial expressions and non-verbal ways of communication while listening or speaking. I'm having a lot of questions here. I will just check what's going on. Okay, hello from Lviv, hello from Kryvyi Rih, Kamensk, Kiev. Okay. Hello, everyone. So far, no comments about anything technical. Great. Okay. Okay, the next one, so we have 3 skills, and how does the Cambridge framework work? This is actually where it's all taken from Cambridge Framework for Life Competencies. So there is a competency, so we have communication. There is a core area of this competency, which I call skill, and there is a component to each core area. If we look at this bubble with the speech bubble that I have as a picture, this is the communication competency. Then we have 3 core areas, and we have 2 components to each core area. When we look at using strategies to facilitate conversations, using strategies for overcoming language gaps and communication breakdowns, where does it live in the Cambridge framework? It sits in the core area as a component, using strategies for overcoming language gaps and communication breakdowns. Example can-do statements here would be: a student who can guess or coin a new item of language based on the existing knowledge. And example language: can you say this word in English? And there could be a please. Yeah, so the whole framework is full of these example language, and you can check it. It's free, downloadable. You can download it on the cambridge.org website in our blog. If you're interested, I can at the end show you where to get it. And here, this is where it sits again, yeah, in a bigger scale of the whole Cambridge framework. So when we think of communication in the classroom, how we can work on the communication strategies, how these strategies work. That's we can recognize and praise good learner-generated models. When learners do something and it works, and it's not something you planned, you need to recognize that and, of course, make it understandable for students that it's something that works and they can use it in future for their life. Noticing communication strategies, this is something that students have to do while working with the course book as well. And also you can use recordings to highlight students' progress. So when we look at noticing communication strategies, how it works in the course book. For example, students watch the video, then they fill out the chart, and then they can talk to their friends about something from this chart. Here we are talking about skills in some activities, something they like, they don't like, they are good at, they are not very good at, like playing tennis, playing hockey, and so on. Once students fill out the chart for their partner, for example, they can tell about themselves and ask questions. And here we have very basic communication, how it works, what is the strategy here. Ask a question, fill out the form, and talk to another person. Like Julia, my friend, likes playing tennis, but she doesn't like running. Okay, and then I can ask you about someone else. Yeah, and this is how we notice this. The example is taken from Prepare Ukrainian Edition. And when we look at speaking activities, here we have the task. Look at the pictures in a cafe and the words in the box. Something is missing from each picture. Ask the waiter for it. Take turns to be the waiter and the waitress. It's already a very practical communication situation. When you are in a cafe and you need to ask a waiter for something. So what we do here, first of all, there is, there isn't, there aren't, and a question form grammar, and just communication, role play, as if you wish. Yeah, so sorry, there is a knife missing. There is no knife on my table. Could you give me the knife, please? And so on. So we teach students different ways to solve this problem, where language is an instrument and the focus is on the task, to understand what's missing, to fill in the gap with the word in our communication, and to build this communication in the role play with our partner. How it works. Learners work towards an understanding of appropriate forms. There is no knife on my table. Could you please bring me the knife? Learners then provide their own conversation. Yeah, they can continue this game with objects they have with them and play this game together. And game is always a model of real life. So that's mastering this skill for life. And of course, for students to notice their progress, it's really recommended, and nowadays it's really easy to do, to record. And then to answer questions. What are you happy with? This is the first question, of course. Yeah, I am happy with the way my voice sounds. I'm happy with the quality of the recording, whatever it is, but list the things you were happy with. Then what difficulties did you face while recording yourself in communication? How did you overcome these? And this can be also done as a game, as if you are going to record a task for younger students, for the young learners, to record yourself speaking, and then they will listen to it. So in this case, students will try their best to make their communication proper. Getting used to it is really important, because this is the way we live now. We use a lot of recordings since the invention of MP3 in 1993, I suppose. It became the format which is super widespread. We even communicate in audio messages these days, and this is something kids do a lot. I have one of the students, not students, one of the actresses with whom whenever I communicate and like ask her to learn the new lines, she would always answer me with the audio message. For me, this is annoying, but for them, this is the new reality. And this is also something we can prepare students for, to teach them communicate briefly, logically, and they can train for it. Anyways, there are other activities for mastering each skill inside of this competency. We will have a look at using language appropriate for the situation. So we look at this picture. You can see what's the situation and what would be the most appropriate way to solve the problem here. And here I have, excuse me, you're standing on my foot. Then there is a problem with the grammar, yeah, in the first bubble. Then yes, that's right, there is a problem with the communication, because this is not how we would answer if we are human beings. This is also not appropriate, because looks like we don't know, we don't understand the person. At the same time, the person could communicate it in a different way, like, hey, careful, yeah. Do you mind freeing my foot from the pressure of yours? Is it appropriate in this situation? Yeah, such a phrase. Or, dear somebody, could you be so kind as to find a possibility to move your foot off from mine? This is something we could write in an email, in an official email to some organization, but not in the street when somebody stands on our foot. So finding appropriate language means a lot as well. And knowing the language proficiently doesn't mean you can find appropriate way to communicate what you want. And this is something to teach students. So the task, change the register. When learners encounter new phrases and expressions in the course book, ask them to consider how they might say the same thing in a different register. And we can brainstorm different ideas, like to show them such a picture and ask students to brainstorm different ways of communication here. Another one, using a variety of language and communication strategies to achieve a desired effect. Using emotions, yeah, here is the task. When practicing pronunciation of phrases and expressions, ask learners to say it like you're happy, like you're sad, angry, surprised, confused, annoyed, and so on. So students notice how they actually look like when they use the language. And in each card, you can see here, there is a way to do it online as well. The third one, adapting language use according to different cultures and social groups. This is one of my favorite tasks here. When practicing pronunciation of phrases and expressions, ask learners to say it like you are talking to a friend, to the queen, to your granddad, to a baby, your head teacher, neighbor, someone you don't like and someone you like. And it would be most probably different phrases every time. The more language students acquire, the more possibilities they can have. And this is a great task to use starting from the 5th grade and up till they are adults. This is also something I did with that picture with someone standing on my foot. And again, there is an online version of this task. Using communication strategies to facilitate conversations. Here we have a huge task. After learners have read a text in the course book, ask them to prepare some interview questions about the text to ask someone else in the class. So you can take a screenshot of this slide, but briefly, the idea of this task is that everybody writes questions in a very limited time about the text. Then one of the students sits in a hot chair and others throw questions into this person, and the person has to answer as fast as possible again. Why so? Because when you set the time limit, there is an intrigue, competitive mode to this task. And if you do it in 2 teams, those who get most answers are the winners, for example. Yeah, and you can have like a metronome or something that would manage this process. And the same for the teaching online. You can use the raise hand in the Zoom where students can do it. Using strategies for overcoming language gaps and communication breakdowns. Same point, different words. This is the task for this component. When learners are practicing new phrases and expressions, ask them how they might say the same thing or make the same point using different words. Write their ideas on the board, correcting any errors, of course, and discuss how the different words can change the meaning, connotation, or register. Great exercise to use even with young learners, but yeah, when you write a sentence, for example, yesterday I had juice for breakfast, then ask a student to change the word. Tomorrow I had juice for breakfast. Doesn't work. Yeah. Okay. The day before I had the juice for breakfast. Then change the word breakfast, first meal of the day, and so on and so far. So paraphrasing is something that teaches your students explain a concept or explain their point using a variety of ways to do this, and this will help them communicate. Even if they don't know a particular word, they will be able to explain what they want to say. Structuring spoken and written texts effectively. Elaborate. When a course book task asks learners to give an opinion or state a preference, encourage them to elaborate and extend their statement or idea by prompting, and also tell me something else, or because, however, tell me the reason. So when we ask students to use these phrases, they have a little bit more language and conversation starters or monologue starters from where it's easier for them to proceed. Using appropriate language and presentation styles with confidence and fluency. Point, explain, example. Write on the board, make a point, explain why, give an example. Yeah, like I make a point. I don't like birds. Explain why. They are stealing my food every day. Give an example. For example, yesterday I was cooking potatoes and there was a pigeon who flew into my window, stole my potato and flew away. Very strange story, of course, and teenagers will give you even stranger stories. But again, it gives your students a structure, how to provide proper opinions and how to be consistent in what they want to communicate. Of course, saying all birds are bad or all birds steal something would be inappropriate. But when you give it an example, you personalize it, and then it's just yours. You tell your opinion and everybody understands it. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Very important thing that all the people, actually, all the students measure their language proficiency by their ability to speak the language, regardless of their grades in texts and exams. Even if I have the highest grade in the test, I might feel really not confident when I communicate to people. Even if we are talking about native language, there are people who know the language very well, but they feel not confident communicating to other people. So communication skill is something bigger than just the language skill. And this is something more important for life than just the language. Language, it's important to remember that, and also in the new Ukrainian school standard and the state standard, in the model program, it's written everywhere that the use of the language is more important. Yeah, language, it's not secondary, of course, it's preliminary, it's a must-have. But what we teach, we need to remember that what we teach is it just subject, predicate, object, adverbial modifiers, and the formulas to structure the sentences into the text, or something like that, or just grammar, grammar references, grammar tables, lists of words to learn, texts to read and translate? What kind of skill does it give to our students? Or we teach them how to manage the conversation, how to notice the strategy, how to read another person's feelings, emotions, using the language as a tool. So once we switch ourselves from just teaching the subject to teaching students the life skill, our teaching becomes a little bit different and funnier, of course. More ideas you can find at the linguist.ua website, where I have a range of articles. The fresh article has the same topic as this webinar. You can have a look and download a few more materials from there. You have a QR code, and please use it. And what's new in the world of book printing for Cambridge English and the Linguist Company? We have the students' book coming out soon, which you can purchase for your work. And of course, I have to explain that it's unfortunately there is a delay in providing schools with the print books because of you all know what. Yeah, we are now in a really challenging situation, and education these days is in a challenging situation, but we're doing everything we can to keep the learning process and educational process alive. So you can find the beginning of the book online. You can use it for free as of now. Later on, you will be able to buy the book. If you don't want to buy the book, you can wait until it gets to your schools for free. But of course, there is this delay connected to the challenging situation we are now all going through. Prepare workbooks. Already on our website, you are able to order them from the Linguist Company and buy the workbooks for your students. If you don't have a possibility to do it right now, there is still online version of the beginning of the workbooks, which you can also use in the online format. We also have 2 new editions. This is Prepare Grammar and Prepare Textbook with more tests and with grammar exercises for your students. And yeah, for you to remember what's new. All the resources, audio, video, yearly plans, term tests online are on Publishing Linguist UA website. Here it is. All the resources in one place. And if you still didn't do it, please go to the new Ukrainian school teacher English teacher platform, where you can pass the training for secondary teachers. There are 7 sections, 10 hours of study material and 15 materials, plus there are lots of resources for managing your classroom and a lot of resources for enriching your lessons in the 5th grade as well. So you can go there and find what's new, and also if you pass the test, you will receive the 10-hour certificate for free, which your educational departments of your region can check whether they are valid. If you do this, you have your 10 hours. And we are now launching the competition. All the details are on the Facebook page. In this competition, what you need to do if you work with Prepare Ukrainian Edition, tell us your story about one of the lessons, about some of your students, whatever you think is interesting to share with the teaching community. All the details are on the Facebook page. Please go there and check what the competition is about. The winners will receive some really nice presents from Cambridge English, and the winning authors will be published in our next mini digest. If you still have questions, you can text me here. Here is my email. And the Linguist Company is the official distributor of Cambridge University Press in Ukraine. You can also text the Linguist managers, to your managers in the Linguist Company. Now it's time for question answers. And of course, there might be a question about your certificates. You will receive your certificates in 1 day after this webinar, which means working day is Monday. You will have to wait till Monday, and on Tuesday you will have your thank you letter for sure. This thank you letter will come to your email that you put during the registration. So make sure to check the correct email box, and also to check your junk mailbox because it might go there. That's about the certificates. If you have any questions, please put them in the question answer button. Okay, I have a few thank yous here. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. If there are no questions, I will just end the webinar, but I can wait for a little while. Okay, there is something. Oh no, those are thank yous. Thank you. Okay, so if you think that you might have a question, you can always text us, text me to this email that you can see on the screen. And as of now, I wish you a great weekend. I'm happy we started this new school year. Wait a second, I do have a question, content-related question. To your opinion, is it effective technique to start engaging silent students into communication via asking easy questions at the beginning of the class? I would say that the best way to start working on communication as communication, not just language, would be at the end of the lesson, or at the very beginning if it's a warm-up activity, but mostly at the end of the lesson, when students already learned something, relaxed during the, or got tired during the lesson. And of course, it is important to involve each student into the communication. And you can do it by managing the way your students work together in the classroom. There might be 2 students, 3 students groups, 4 students teams, and most probably students will feel more confident in their communication if they have very specific task, and if you give them something they are strong at. For example, I had a student who never wanted to speak for almost the whole year. He was silent. He always told me that he hates English. But I found the way to him through the plasticine. I always tell this story to the teachers. But we started making, we had the topic furniture, and the idea was to build your own furniture with the plasticine. And he was so cool at this that we finally started building the whole house, and he was speaking throughout the whole thing. And at some point he started using English language finally, and it was the beginning of his way into the English language. Then we would make something else out of this plasticine together. Then other students were involved, and little by little he got involved into other activities. Of course, if students feel really uncomfortable, we cannot force them, but we always can find a way for them to participate in the communication, to listen and write down their ideas, to follow the time limit, to keep some word cards for the rest. We can find any way for the participation, because the first thing for any communication is to start the collaboration. They are very connected, these 2 competencies. So yes, I would say yes, but maybe at the end of the class would be more appropriate to do this for silent students. Okay. Since I don't have more questions, I would be again saying goodbye. Thank you very much. You remember your certificates will be in the thank you letters. Have a great weekend, and see you next month on another webinar. Have a great time. Bye.